who is that?
That was awesome. That was a great lead-in.
Welcome everyone to the Wednesday Night Live show. We got a full show today and two guests joining us. Jerad Najvar is joining us. He is the founder and principal attorney for Najvar Law Firm PLLC. Did I get that all right, Jerad?
You got it right.
All right. And everybody knows that guy down there, Travis. Travis, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And we got Tim's got the news today. I'm off today. I tell you, I'm having a bad day today. But Tim's got the news and advocacy reports. I'm sure Allison's got something. You got something, Allison, tonight? No,
I brought the guests. I got nothing. No,
she brought the guests. Did you bring food and drinks for our guest as well?
No,
I think she covered the basic principle. If you're going to bring some to class, make sure you bring enough for everyone. So, there you go. Travis and Jerad right there.
There we go. And Paul, welcome, Paul. Let's just jump right into it because I want to get into our guests. Tim, say your hellos real quick.
Okay, hey everybody.
No story, no full story.
I'm not going to tell any stories. I had plenty, but I'll spare everyone here in the chat. Just saying hey to everybody in the chat that showed up. Thanks for coming in early. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of the Wednesday Night Live show. We got Shannon Brown in the chat, who made it on time tonight. Good man. I know Mallory was in there. I know I'd saved Mallory from the Pelly Joes of the world. Who else? We got Michael Redfern. We got Professor Milky or Prof Millicky, excuse me. And I think Amanda's here. Wow, look at that. Amanda hanging out in the chat with the nice purple icon.
Hey, Amanda.
And that's it right now. But we got 6 on. The more will show up I can guarantee.
All right, Tim, your hellos for yourself, I meant, but that's okay. I'm glad you got the
I thought you wanted to bypass all that. You're like, no stories, so I went right to the chat. See, your cue was kind of lacking.
Always
there.
Blame the host.
All right, real quick. It's been a good 2.5 weeks at the new job. I'm kind of falling into line. I've thrown myself to the wolves, and I'm learning how to do stuff with no training. But hey, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Exactly. Whole lot of unanswered emails right now. They probably don't even know who the guy is.
I love Tim.
Yep. And consolation, I bought a cheesecake the other night. How about that?
Son of a bitch. Damn. All right. Thanks for all that info, Tim.
You're welcome.
Allie, you are up, Allie.
Oh man, I really don't have much going on this week. I got, marching band stuff. That's pretty much my life right now. So,
marching band mama.
Killing it. Yeah, that's right. So, I did actually get offered a fellowship by the World Vapers Alliance. So, yeah, I talked to them today. They want me to work with them and do more stuff like activist stuff over here, similar to what they're doing in the UK. So that's super exciting.
Nice. A free trip to the UK maybe in the making there.
I would not be mad at that.
And our Australian person over there, Mr. Foster's.
Oh, no, come on, please. No Foster's jokes today. All right, enough of that. No, I've had a very strange, stressful week. Going for tests,
come here to relax.
Wow, this is a happy ass show today.
No, just getting ready for knee surgery. That's all
that's
I've
right.
been doing.
Yeah.
I think you should go big or go home, Paul. Blow it out before you get it replaced.
Do both knees. If you were a real man, you'd have both
new
knees
ones
done.
Fuck the old ones.
Point taken.
All right.
No, that's all good.
Jerad, welcome to the show. And how's your week? You're having a great week. I'm gonna guess you're having a great week. You're smiling. You're gonna give us some happy news.
Well, actually, yeah, I can. Of course, I'm smiling because I'm definitely playing the stereotypical role of the stuffy lawyer in this group. So I'm glad to be true to type, and
I got 2 lawyer jokes for you. Coming. So I love lawyer jokes, and we got a lawyer tonight, so I was like, gotta hit him with 2 lawyer jokes.
But no, glad to be here. Good to meet y'all. And sometimes it's good to have an outsider. Travis told me when Travis first called me a couple years ago when we first got into the non-delegation constitutional challenge I filed for the USVA. I didn't know vaping from
Yeah.
from anything else. I mean, and that turned out to be actually. I mean, I think it's a good thing, because I came with a completely open mind, and and if anything, I had a negative view of vaping because I thought, who are these? Like all from somebody who never vaped and was never exposed to it, I just didn't understand like what is going on. These people walking around with these little, devices and blowing smoke, but they're inside buildings and things. I just thought it was weird, if anything. So I had kind of a negative view, and then, but as soon as I started diving into it, completely changed. And and now I can see the government is just completely has their head in their ass.
Yep.
And just ignoring the facts, just like they've done with so many other things recently. So, I think it's a benefit. So I'm happy to play the stuffy lawyer who, is
saved our
outsider to your world.
Oh, Jared. What do you call a lawyer that's gone bad, Jared?
I don't know. That's that's called the JD. That's what happens when you get out of law school, I think.
You call him senator. You call him senator.
Yeah.
That's joke number one. I'll hit you with the next one later. Travis, how's your week going, buddy?
Man, it's pretty good. Fast paced. We got a lot of stuff going on, and a lot to keep up with. And but overall, still riding on a good note and a lot of positive action moving forward. So it's a good week.
Yeah, we are the industry that hopes for little things, and hopefully someday those little things will add up to something great. And hopefully before I pass away, hopefully.
You better not die before me. We're the same age.
I'm older than you by a couple days, Tim.
Okay, well, all right.
Swift.
He can't look. It's just give it up. Now he's putting an H in my life.
I'm going to fuck with you now so bad you have no idea. Well, let's jump
mute?
right in.
Where's the mute button?
You can't mute me. I am at the com, as Star Trek fans would say. Let's get right into it with Jerad. For those of us that are not lawyers, Jerad, could you in simple terms explain exactly what took place with the USVA and the 11th Circuit Court?
Sure. Well, and I should say so I have 4 clients who won their appeals in the 11th Circuit. I argued that in Miami, in the federal courthouse in Miami back in May. And by the way, it was great to be back in person, back in action in the courts, after all this COVID, period. So that was a great feeling to go to Miami and get to argue that. I got to meet, my clients out there. All of them are based in Florida. Basically, after a string of defeats in these other circuits, we won in the 11th Circuit. Thank goodness we got a really, we got a panel of judges, a majority that saw through the BS and agreed that, I think these other courts are really just too deferential to the government. I mean, it's really a high bar, and part of that is by design. But I think even with the arbitrary and capricious standard that you're supposed to meet to defeat, a government decision like this, like the DC Circuit and the 5th Circuit and the Triton case were just too deferential. And that happens, it's not surprising. That unfortunately happens a lot. But anyway, it was a major victory, the first victory in these cases. I won for 4 clients, and we were all consolidated. So 6 petitioners actually won. There were 3 cases argued that day. And, the judges were, a majority at least, ruled for us. They said that it was arbitrary and capricious to deny the applications for these companies without having read the marketing plans. But something that, and I've got a lot of thoughts on this, so happy to just address your questions or just sort of give my narrative of what I think.
Speak freely.
Yeah.
So number one, that's huge. That's the same argument was rejected in 2 other circuit courts. Well, now 3. I saw the 7th Circuit issued its decision yesterday. I think yesterday. I'm still waiting on a decision from the 9th Circuit. in another case that was argued just recently. So that one could go either way. But the 11th Circuit said, you know, and everybody knows this. This is so obvious to everybody who pays attention and reads the guidance and reads the rules. FDA said repeatedly that you're going to get a holistic review. You know, you're going to look at all aspects of the application, and the marketing plan is a quote critical part of that, right? And you know, and I think there are major distinctions in terms of youth appeal and health risk, and therefore how the FDA is supposed to review these applications based on device type also. Because all of my clients in Florida are, you know, smaller companies, vape shops, manufacturers for vape shops that sell the open tank liquids. And the 11th Circuit, I mean, and I've been hammering that issue. The FDA just paints with a broad brush and put everybody in the same box, even though the data doesn't support that at all. In terms of youth, you know, to the extent youth are attracted to products, it's not the open tank systems. And it's so frustrating to go through all this litigation, and it's like you're beating your head against the wall, and these judges will not just see the facts in front of their face. It's like the FDA can just ignore facts in the record, ignore the studies, ignore the data on this, as if it's an irrelevant distinction, when all the while, all their enforcement statements, everything has recognized this distinction and said, you know, that kids don't use the open tank systems. And so how you review the marketing plan, the plans to restrict marketing should, you know, the type of device that you're selling for should play into whether the marketing plan is sufficient or not in an overall holistic review of these applications. And so even better than that, the 11th Circuit did two things that are incredibly important. Number one, they ruled that it was they remanded these decisions to the FDA because they said their denials were arbitrary and capricious for not reviewing the marketing plans. But just as important as that holding was them to recognize the distinction, and they wrote this in clear terms, that to the extent the FDA has identified a youth vaping problem, it does not extend in the same way to open tank, to bottled e-liquids. And that's massive. So, you know, everybody who thinks it's not so easy for the FDA just to paper up some excuses on remand and reissue denials. They're going to have to engage in at least a little more analysis and get a little more honest. And so, you know, I'm going to try to hold them to that. But
do they have an appeal process, or is this is set in stone? What happened with the 11th Circuit?
No. So, you know, the next step is we're going to have to see what the government does, because, of course, now you have a circuit split. We've got more decisions yet to come out. And so if I were the FDA, I mean, they could. It's not a guarantee that these are going to go.
I had to do that. If you said if I was the FDA, I had to hit that button. I just had to.
It's not guaranteed these are going to go on remand. You know, right now, it's possible the FDA could wait. They could seek rehearing in the 11th Circuit, or, you know, other manufacturers who lost in the other circuits could seek rehearing. And, you know, it might be a situation where, because all these cases are raising essentially the same legal arguments with some factual distinctions, it's possible that it all just gets wrapped up in a Supreme Court appeal when these appeals are done.
Yeah, because I think that's something. I mean, I don't know. I don't know who else on our panel here knows how that whole system works, and it's very confusing. You know, 11th Circuit Court, this appeal, Supreme Court. So it's just like when we hear these things, it's like the first thing I think to myself is, what's their next step? Because it seems like anytime something happens in court nowadays, there's always like, well, we got an appeal, or we can do this. So I was just kind of curious, what would their next play be? So you
right. Well, and I'll just try to simplify. There's basically two options. So the FDA they have 45 days from the day of the decision. So basically another 35 days or so to decide whether to seek a rehearing in this court, in the Court of Appeals, or to go to the Supreme Court. And so I think they're going to take, that time to try to see what else comes down and what to do. The other option would be they could just accept the ruling and take it back on remand and put these applications back under review.
Okay. Yeah. Because I hate that. It's like, it seems like a case never dies. It just keeps going and going and going. And then it's like 3 years later and it pops up in some news feed and you're thinking, oh, wasn't that like 4 years ago? And it's just settled. It always happens.
I also think it's worthy to pay attention to what they plan on doing, even if it comes down to a rehearing or trying to move it to a higher court, as they're notorious for shifting the goalposts too. Yeah. So they could, I mean, I guess it's presumptuous to say this, but I mean, they could put these back on review and then kind of rescript the rule and try to find another loophole for themselves to, reissue an MDO. I mean, is that a possibility, or are they? I mean, because how do you validate that they've actually really put their nose to the paperwork and kind of reviewed the marketing plans and stuff like that? Do they have to present what their criteria were for the said review?
Well, yes and no. I mean, they have to. Their position at this point would be like they don't have to put out some specific guidance or parameters as to how they're going to review the marketing plans in particular. They're going to rely on what they've said about the PMTA review as a whole.
As a whole, yeah.
Yeah. And so we're arguing about how does that fit in the whole scheme of things.
Travis, how are you feeling?
I feel good anytime we get to fight with them.
Yeah.
So anytime we get to swing on them, I say we take the opportunity because, what we see, and I think being in the industry, the time that I have and throughout this process is that, coming up with an argument, not constantly challenging their authority and taking it to the one place that we hope to get fair, a fair trial, fair swing at as the way we read it and see if the interpretation is there. And that's what Jerad's really good at. And no matter which way we look at it, and it's kind of like he said, whenever I reached out to him, and one of the main reasons that, I did is because of the fact that he was outside of the industry. We needed a fresh look. We needed someone that had no idea, that only looked at what's the issue and how does it affect this industry and how does the federal government violate, what we're trying to do and certain checks and balances that we have in place. Yeah. And that's why, in the beginning, in my opinion, we were shooting for the one thing with our first lawsuit, which was the non-delegation doctrine. And, even now, more importantly now, we have more evidence than ever that, they have too much of a broad authority. And what we see more and more, I don't know, Jerad, if you agree or not, but, Allie, you guys on Twitter, y'all see this more than anything, is that anytime vaping comes around, you have every, squad, representative committee, the whole 9 yards going after it. But in reality, when you look at this stuff and you look at the way that the TCA is shaped, it's just a bunch of noise. They have no real authority in the big picture of it all. And that's why the fight constantly needs to be taken back to the FDA. And no matter what, anything that comes down the pipe that, government's trying to step in and intervene and kind of stop the FDA from having certain discretions is extremely important, because right now I think, again, we need to make sure that we can show the breakdown and the flaws within what the FDA and the Center for Tobacco Products is trying to enforce upon small businesses. And as we'll get to, is really press them and force them to provide a pathway for small businesses, because no one else is fighting for us. Of course, the big guys, they can afford to fail over and over and over and fight in court all the time, over and over and over. But, 87% of the industry is small businesses.
Right.
So, we have to have somebody that is fighting for that interest and that interest alone. And of course, in doing that, we fight on the basis that we want everyone to succeed, and we want every shape and size. We want the industry to succeed. And, that's one of the biggest things right now is that we're probably eventually going to get into is really forcing the FDA in court to show how they're making this feasible for small businesses. Because I think Jerad can touch on that a little bit, and some of the things that we know now is they actually stated that there was no financial impact at all to a business to go through this process. And we know that to be absolutely false. So wouldn't cost small business anything. Nothing.
We all got lawyers in our back pocket. I mean,
yeah.
Everyone has a lawyer in their family. I mean, come on.
Not me.
No, and the way, honestly, the way that I look at it is it really just depends on which way they look at you, because is it going to cost a small business anything? No, because in their mind, you should just give up and go away. That's why you see through all the FOIA requests that's out there from CASA and everyone else and Filter Magazine, where the FDA is openly discussing and giving leniency to the 6 largest stakeholders in the industry, allowing them to fix their stuff, and nothing.
Well, in the beginning, that's what it felt like. It felt like they were weaning out the small guy and getting them out of the way, and just I get and I understand. We talked about this before, the way they decided to go about these PMTAs, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, there are 6 large manufacturers. Those guys are going to get priority because they control the market, a majority of the market. So I get that, but then just to throw out everyone like the way they did and just give everybody a denial, and it just felt like, okay, let's just wean these guys out of here. Let's get these guys. And it almost felt like, and that's what I want to ask Jerad, do you feel like after their decision with the court, did you feel like they were backed up against the wall? Because I know you guys, lawyers, can read people and read the courtroom and read things. So I'm wondering how you felt. Did you feel like they were backed up against the wall? Like, holy shit, they actually got this through?
In the Miami courtroom, I definitely felt that way. That was, I was very confident during that argument because the judges were the majority. The 2 who were in the majority here for us were with us the whole way through. I mean, everything I said, they were nodding in agreement, and that's a great feeling when you're arguing an appeal. That's the first time that's ever happened. I've had pretty favorable panels before, but I've never had one like they got it. And there was nothing that the FDA attorneys could do to sort of, I mean, everything the FDA guy tried to say, they were calling him on it. It was fantastic. And some of these other panels, it's the opposite. It's like they don't hear anything that I say, and they're just gobbling up what the government lawyer says.
Do you feel like we're? Go ahead, Paul. No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't see you.
One question, Jerad. If, for argument's sake, a few more cases like this are won, okay, would this then force the hand of the FDA to push it to the Supreme Court and then have their breakfast handed back to them?
It would, I don't think I'm sort of giving the FDA any insight here that they don't already have.
Yeah.
One thing that they could do if they tried to play it smart is just, well, I start from the premise that I actually think, and knowing how the hydraulics of the appellate system work, I think our arguments, sort of broader scope arguments about how they change the substantive evidentiary standard, I think our best shot of winning that argument is in the Supreme Court. If the FDA were smart, they might, because these these intermediate appellate judges, they don't have the gonads always to stick their neck out and say what they should say. They play it ultra safe, like too safe. Even with the high standard that we have to meet, they're still too deferential. And when you get to the Supreme Court, sometimes you get a different dynamic. But I do think we have a strong argument that they didn't provide fair notice. They switched the substantive evidentiary standard 10 months after the filing deadline. Okay. And no court has bid on that argument yet. But so if the FDA is smart, and if they feel the same way, like if they think that they have a chance of losing that, what they ought to do is take these on remand. Whatever they lose, they ought to just take it on remand and try to write a better denial and then issue it again, and then try to defend that, and try to take that argument away from us. But like I said, I don't think it's as easy to do that as a lot of people think, because they've got to account for the distinction between open and closed systems. And the data kind of make that hard to do. They're going to have
very hard. Yeah.
Write it up in a better way. But also, I think, to get back to sort of like the larger question you posed earlier, do I feel like their back is against the wall? If you look, right now, we're fighting on a very small battlefield. We're fighting only over, in these MDO appeals, we're fighting over one component of the PMTA of this massive, obligation to file this ridiculous open-ended application. If you read the PMTA final rule, it's a completely open-ended question. It's completely ambiguous. There's all this variability in this industry among products, flavor, PG, VG, nicotine content, everything that goes into it. And so it's just your complete guess in terms of, like, for the health risk investigations you're supposed to test for, what is the comparator product you're supposed to use, or products? What are you actually supposed to be testing for? These courts don't understand that at all.
Right.
So anyway, what I'm getting at is, like, we're fighting on a very small battlefield. Even with this victory, if it holds, the FDA still has enormous discretion to deny these applications.
Yeah.
It's completely up to them. There's no guidance from Congress. It's just basically bureaucrats deciding who they want to win, and there's major problems there. So that's sort of the impetus. That's why the RFA case we're going to file is far more important, I believe, in the long term, because if we win on this,
say hi to Amanda, everybody.
If we win on this issue that the FDA did not do their did not meet their obligation to explore and make available a pathway for small businesses, then that changes the whole system. That would wipe out the entire PMTA rule as to small businesses, at least. And just sort of a last point on that, or like thinking about the big picture, like, I've got an interesting perspective, like, coming from the legal system, that I can tell you for sure, like, there are often good arguments that are never argued. And because you have to think about who has, in order to win a case like this against the government, most of the time, it's just the biggest companies that are bringing these arguments, because they have the best lawyers that sit around and, can figure out these issues and have the resources to fight it, right, all the way up, to win, like something like the non-delegation argument we brought, or like this RFA suit is going to be a massive, massive effort on a pretty novel issue. There's very little precedent on applying that statute, but these other companies, why has nobody filed it yet? Because these other companies like Juul and Enjoy and everybody else, the big players in the market, they don't have the incentive to do it. They like you said earlier, they've got their own sort of ends in the agency, and they've got their own. They play by different rules,
right?
And so what I'm here to say to everybody out there listening, if you're a small business, looking for like a way to proceed, don't think that just because the big guys are not bringing an argument, it's not a viable argument. It's not an argument that's in their interest to bring. It's small businesses that have to do it. And I've looked at it, and I think this argument really has legs. I think it's far more likely to win on the merits than I ever thought these MDO appeals did, because the standard on these MDO appeals is very difficult to meet, to prove that the FDA was arbitrary. That's an almost impossible standard. So, whereas the RFA, it's a pretty simple legal argument. And so anyway, we can get into more of that if you want, but it's just interesting. You got to think about who has the incentive to bring certain legal arguments. And this is one. There's often things that just sort of lay in waiting. They're out there, but nobody's challenging them on these bases for years and years. And then all of a sudden, you just have the right conditions and somebody with the motivation.
Right. Well, Juul doesn't have any open systems to deal with anyway, so it wouldn't be an issue to them whether they go forward with it or fight it or anything. So for them, they're locked in with their system, and who cares for the little guy? And that's their.
I mean, Juul knows they're not going to lose, so why would they?
They're not.
They're not.
There's a little bit of sensationalism, right? They got to look. They got to take their bad sheep lumps, like they did with their MDO and all that, just to kind of make everybody sort of, okay, yeah, they got their slap on the hand kind of thing, but that they can probably easily come back to that. I guess my questions kind of go a different direction in that sense, because where you said, small business owners shouldn't wait for Juul or Enjoy to kind of lead the way on fighting particular fights. And I agree with that wholeheartly, because I feel like while we all completely support all forms of THR in any format, there's kind of a bullseye on Juul and some of these bigger companies like that, because they've sort of been our bane at the same time. It's like they haven't always really sort of been a positive influence in terms of the fight that we're trying to take on, because it comes back down to the open systems. And I feel like the FDA just kind of blanket viewed everything, almost as though like the anti groups that you see opining on Twitter, the negativity around vaping, is they kind of only see one picture in their mind. They don't see what Travis has in his hand, or what any of us happen to be vaping, and what our goal is, or our target for vaping to stay away from smoking. And they just see everything as a Juul. They see everything as this, massively addictive thing for the kids. But my question is more towards the idea of you coming into and arguing these cases, not having had any exposure or knowledge of the vaping industry prior to that. So if these cases continue on, do you see any benefit in bringing in other lawyers that come from a same place and space as you? So maybe that encourages the enthusiasm behind fighting for the vaping industry, rather than some guy who just wants to collect a check and might know a little bit about a little bit. Maybe other epiphany kind of support would be beneficial. And also, second part of that question is, do you see these particular cases permeating outwards into, say, other areas, and using this as the precedent to say this is the angle you can take to fight for this, and then more people energized outside of the state of Florida to fight these same kinds of judgments? I know that was a loaded question.
Yeah. Well, no, on the first one, in terms of like, is there value to additional counsel coming in who can maybe see things or play certain roles? I think absolutely yes. And we've already, in terms of the RFA suit, I've already got basically co-counsel who will be coming on with me, who because my sort of bailiwick has always been constitutional issues, which and not necessarily in the administrative law context, right? Normally it's not administrative law. What I've done, it's more, it's usually suing the government at various levels, but it's based on straight constitutional issues whereas here we have, when you're in the admin law world, there's a whole statutory framework that presents other procedural questions. And, there's bodies of case law. I mean, admin law unto itself is a massive area. So, I'm sort of like the constitutional law, point guy, and I'm partnering up with another firm that's got some guys with some young, ambitious guys that have had a great success in the admin law field with some victories against government agencies on traditional like APA type questions. And then, depending on where you are. So I guess I would say it's not necessarily you need people with industry experience, although that could help. It's possible depending on the argument. Maybe there's a lawyer, or, sometimes it doesn't need to be a lawyer. You might bring in an expert on tobacco harm reduction or whatever it is, or economics, depending on the issue, to testify in a case. But like, so in this case, for the RFA case, we're going to have myself and then some lawyers with some specific admin law, deeper experience. I don't want to name them yet because we've got to finalize sort of the client list and make sure there's no conflicts and all that stuff. But I'm very, very excited about that team we're putting together. And then, sometimes there's appellate specialists or Supreme Court specialists when you get to different levels.
Right.
I'm sort of more that myself in terms of at least in the intermediate appellate level. I've done Supreme Court stuff also, but sometimes people bring in a big gun who's argued 10 cases in the Supreme Court. If you get argument there, things like that.
The hired gun.
Yeah, there's firms that specialize in that, that are filled with clerks who worked at the Supreme Court, and so they have that insight. On the second question, I mean, is this an impetus? I hope it's an impetus like this victory. I think your question was this 11th Circuit case. Is it an impetus to further action?
Well, I think, I mean, it's something that we talk about from the aspect of, fighting in our own local area, right? So you have small businesses that obviously want to survive. I mean, they can't all, they can't run to Florida and get representation down there. They're going to have to fight in their own particular area that they need to defend, right? So maybe they might be a smaller vape e-liquid manufacturer that got an MDO, but they do want to stand and fight it. Do you think that when they obtain counsel in their particular area, that they will look at this particular case as a precedent on how they fight against the same points?
Oh yeah, sure. Well, for one, I mean, yeah. So let's say the 11th Circuit decision stands, or as of now, certainly if somebody files a case in the 11th Circuit within their jurisdiction, you've got a great shot at getting an injunction for the same APA arguments we won at this point against your MDO, if you're still within the period of challenge your MDO. And I guess actually there's some good news on that front. Like, this is the value to having to being a member of a trade association, because when whether it's the USVA or the VTA, there's Florida Smoke Free Association that is also sort of an umbrella for my clients in Florida.
Nick Orlando, our man.
Yeah, and kudos to them for throwing in. I mean, it takes scrappy people, fighters, to take these fights back to the government. But those trade associations it's a way to spread the cost of this kind of litigation and potentially, get the benefits out to all the members, because when an association that represents its members legally gets relief, that flows to the members. So you don't have to be a named plaintiff. So when we file the RFA case, and I won't reveal where that's going to be, but really it's irrelevant. You could be somebody in Oregon or Florida or Texas or Maine or South Carolina, and if you're a member of the plaintiff group, and here will be the USVA will be one of the plaintiffs, you'll be able to get relief under the injunction or the judgment if we get there.
Yeah. I got a quick question for you, because we don't get to see what goes on in court. I'm just kind of curious. Do these judges kind of ask for a break? Because I'm assuming, like you said, a lot of these people don't know what this device is, how it works. Do they go into that process when you're having these types of trials? Do they say, explain this product to me? Do you get that as well? Because I'm kind of curious if it's just them reading a piece of paper, or do you guys go into depth what this product is, how it is, what's in it, all that stuff, and kind of go through that breakdown with them at all?
Well, so sort of two answers. Depends on what court you're in. And for these MDO appeals, there's much less. You're limited to the administrative record that's before the agency, right? Okay. So you're just arguing based on the paper that's already in the agency. Okay. And you, to the extent you can find those facts and images of the things and stuff to cite to the court, like in the record in the studies, then you can talk about it. Okay. But that can really, that's a real advantage to go into district court on another lawsuit. And that's one thing I hope to do. I have felt hobbled by that in these appeals. You're limited to what the FDA, or what's in the PMTAs, but these PMTAs had to be thrown together, in large part, by small companies who don't have the resources to do it all.
Yeah.
And but no, so in a district court case, you can have whatever testimony you want, and I'm absolutely going to tell that story. Make real clear to the judge the distinction in these devices, the history of it, the harm reduction. The people, every shop owner or client I have that has talked to me about this has the same story, and it's like they quit combustible cigarettes almost immediately when they started vaping. And that's a compelling story that the judges aren't hearing right now. Yeah.
That's kind of sad. I always wondered about that. Are you ready for your next lawyer joke?
I'm ready.
What do lawyers and sperm have in common?
What?
1 in 3 million have a chance of becoming human. I had to lighten it up this show. There's a lot of lawyer talk, so I figured let's throw in some good lawyer jokes in there and get everybody laughing.
I've never heard that one. That's good.
That's a new one. You got to write that one down. Allie, you've been quiet. You got something?
I mean, a lot of this stuff I've already, I know, and obviously we were in the company that I work for was in another suit in another circuit that Jerad went to battle for us. But I mean, I think my question is, like, can we get like some feedback for you? And I think the most ridiculous thing I've seen is that dissent, is that how you say it? Spoiler alert, like, response. It almost felt like, to me, you do whatever the hell you want, the FDA is just going to screw you over anyway, kind of thing. And I think that was a little shocking, the way that it was written from a judge. But I just was like, it kind of felt like, yeah, haha, you got to win this time. But that's how it came off, very like condescending.
Yeah, it did. And for one, the tone of it is odd, is atypical. I think it's improper.
Yeah.
It's certainly sort of childish. I mean, it's not the judicial temperament or the norm that you would expect. When I saw the dissent and it started out with this paragraph all in caps, I've never seen that before.
Oh, wow.
And
it started out with spoiler alert. Like,
I think you can blame Facebook for that, Jerad. You could blame Facebook for that, because anytime someone's angry, it's just all caps.
Yeah, I was just really shocked. I almost thought it was like a joke. I was like, is this real? Did somebody like edit this page? Like, this can't be real. Like, this isn't what the person said. But no, it was legitimately what she had to say.
Wow.
Well, yeah, and you can see, and that's also why I say I think like that dissent, it doesn't really recognize what I'm saying about like the real impact of what the majority held in terms of the device distinctions. The FDA can't just write a couple more sentences and then reissue it. Right.
And I figured a judge would know that. Like, I just was, I just kind of felt like somebody was really like, almost took it personally, the way the response was written. So I was just kind of curious to, like, how did you feel about that?
Well, I'll say, anybody who's masochistic enough to listen to the argument audio, you can listen to the same judge. The dissenting judge was asking questions, and it was like she wasn't hearing the answers. I guess it wasn't the answer she wanted to hear. Either she really didn't understand, or she just was talking to make a point, and it didn't matter what I said. But she asked the same question multiple times, and it's like, she didn't want to hear the answer. She didn't want to move on.
Yeah.
And, people can decide for themselves. I think for whatever reason, she just was not going to be persuaded. And, it is what it is.
Is that indicative of human nature to kind of, and dare I say, you would think that a judge would be, neutral when a case is being impartial to a case being argued, because you're arguing. I mean, both sides are presenting their case effectively and trying to get a ruling in their favor. But would you say that some of it kind of rolls back into human nature, where you're up against some inevitable bias that pre-exists before you stand there?
Well, yeah, it's true. And we're also, it does make it more difficult when you're limited to the administrative record and you're just arguing based on paper that you had, I mean, yes, my clients put materials into their PMTAs, but there was no opportunity at the trial level like you normally have to put in your own evidence in terms of testimony and experts and things. I mean, these PMTAs had to be thrown together to try to meet this massive requirement, and it's just a bunch of anyway, everybody knows that process. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to be too dismissive of her questions or concerns. I think a lot of it just derives from the fact that it's hard to it's hard to explain sort of the industry in a 15-minute argument. And people come in with their own sort of predispositions, and apparently there wasn't enough to change their mind. But I think a lot of it has to do with the facts that are out there, like the FDA just really pounding this there's a threat to kids from vaping, just sort of painting with a broad brush, and consistently trying to evade our points about how there's distinction in these devices, kids aren't using open tanks, et cetera. And so, but the judges go in with that that is the background, is like they're thinking this is an epidemic for kids, just across the board.
Yeah. And the biggest issue, I think, for me is like they want to talk about the kids so much, but what about the kids' parents, like me? Is it not going to affect my kid if I'm not here because I'm scared back to smoking cigarettes, or it's the only alternative and I want to smoke? Like, is that not matter? It just matters. Yeah.
Right. Well, and that when we have a chance to go into a district court on this new case, that's the kind of story I want to tell. They put a lot of that evidence in, have people testify about their experience, how their health has improved. They can play with their kids and grandkids.
Yeah, I feel like that's, when you go back to this woman sort of being ingrained, I think sometimes it's hard for us to digest the fact that they're not sitting there looking at the human element of it all. Granted, they are maybe looking at one component, which is, they've kind of bought into the whole youth epidemic thing, but they're also there just sort of insensitive to the whole argument. They're just they're arguing on what the argument is, and it's not about the pure evidence or the tobacco harm reduction side of it. They're just kind of looking at it from the mechanical aspect of what their ruling is, whether or not the FDA went about it the right way versus whether or not you still deserve a fair shot at getting that document reviewed. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, right. That's another major influence, in how they approach it. They're coming at it from, and this is their job. They have to apply the appropriate standard of review, and so they have to be deferential to the FDA. And it's on us as the challenger to really go. You have to meet a high bar to show that this is not just maybe like the wrong decision, but it was outside the bounds of a reasonable decision. That's the standard we had to meet.
Yeah. Well, they're playing their cards. They're playing their cards smart. I mean, even with all the vapors that are out there and all the smokers out there, you still have a lot of people that are out there that have never smoked, that have never touched a vaping device, that really don't care and are not really interested in what's going on with this battle. So they know they can get that public sway and just throw in the kids. They can, anytime they need to get something done, it's always the kids. They throw those kids out front, and of course, you run into people. We all have run into people that have given us misinformation because they've read just the headline of an article, didn't dig into it or nothing at all. They just read the headline, with the Navali stuff and all this other things. It's just a battle. It's just so difficult to fight when when they've got the upper hand, because obviously, a majority of the people don't vape, don't smoke, don't care.
And they believe what the government's telling them,
And they
because
believe-
they believe that that's public health and that
Yeah,
they should trust everything they say. I mean, they just keep spewing it out. Like, it's nonstop.
But then as soon as you throw in alcohol, the subject just ends right there. Well, alcohol's fine. Alcohol's fine, I was blown away the other day. I just, I knew there was alcohol ice cream out there. I'm not stupid. I'm not going to pretend like I didn't know it was out there. But for it to be just out in the open and in a regular aisle with the rest of the ice cream, to me, it just says, we don't give a shit. If the
We have a guy that drives through our neighborhood with the icy, alcoholic ice pops and sounds like an man, and it's just for
I think every park should have a guy with one of those little carts just to get vodka.
I think so too, but that's not the issue.
These kids are driving me crazy. Travis, what's your next step?
So, with us, we're hands in, all hands in with Jerad. Anything we need to do to shape up, anything that we can do to utilize our membership and, really bring in and get the stories and the points that we need to make in court, and some of the things that he outlined there with what we have coming up. So hearing the stories and really connecting with the customers to see like the relationship that's developed with these small businesses. And I think there's a whole lot more of other angles that are really going to play out in our favor. It's as far as the MDOs and as they continue to come out, it's kind of like Jerad was saying is, they're probably going to come back and kind of define those MDO letters a little bit better, because I think that was their biggest flaw when they went out and just shot out the same response to everyone. And that's something that we utilize, and it's that type of thinking that we'll continue to use to move forward and try and find any little angle that we can take to team up together and really take that fight harder, because again, a small business in general is not going to be able to respect the MDO, shut down their business, hire an individual law firm, get the information that this law firm needs to have within a 30-day period to turn around and fight that in court. And that's where, we got really lucky with Jerad being able to, adapt and visualize and kind of see the strategy that we were putting in place. And it's really nice to see that it worked out, and we have that victory now. And again, it's just that type of thinking and, really just not accepting not accepting what they're giving us. And if we don't like what they're giving us, we'll knock the table over and try another way. So,
Do you feel like they're thin with representation on what's going on? Are they stretched out themselves as far as having lawyers here, there, and everywhere around trying to fight battles?
It does. And actually, several months ago, I think it was the first hearing in Congress when the House Appropriations had a hearing and the new FDA commissioner came in to testify. He actually acknowledged that he said something to the effect of, we got to really dot our I's and cross our T's, because this industry is really litigious, and he was trying to explain to Congress, as if all of our lawsuits, because I myself filed 17 MDO appeals. And I think altogether there were 50 of them, 40 or something. And so he was referring to that and trying to make it sound like they just forgot to dot an I here and there. And we're
Check
so
box.
good at litigating, we're putting them back on their heels. It's not, they're just hiding the substantial deficiencies, just refusal to be reasonable from Congress. But actually, to an extent, yes, that was sort of an admission of that. They are a little stretched thin. I believe, it's interesting because I'm here. I have cases in 5 different circuits, and the government filed basically the same brief in all the cases. And I noticed that, just as each one would fall, they weren't really, it was they didn't have the resources to really try to tailor it to that circuit or anything. And there were
kind of like our MDO letters, huh? Just copy and paste.
Yeah, and they weren't exactly like that. And like when I would file, I would file my brief, they would respond. Like they weren't responding to my actual arguments in the briefs. They would just regurgitate the same brief that they had in the other courts. Which, sometimes that's a good strategy. I mean, if you ignore a point completely, that's one of the best ways to get the court to ignore it, is like they just forget about it. So then we've got to come back and remind them.
Yeah. Sorry, Jared. And also, I think this is something that Jerad and I have discussed, because I listened to each one of these oral arguments, I listened to the audio to it, and that's where you really start to discover what their argument is going to be in every different court, because, their argument is still the same. So you really kind of start to get to see what they're going to really press on. And I think that's, valuable. And because it really allows us, as we're moving forward, to update PMTAs and then turn around and kind of strategize and kind of prepare as to what, where we need to strengthen certain aspects of a PMTA through these oral arguments, because it's just eventual, so strengthening it and learning what they're going to argue is some of the biggest wins, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They're not telling us.
So, hey, Jerad, real quick question, because I'm kind of curious. Who did someone sit you down and throw all this stuff in front of you device wise and explain to you how it all works? Or did you just kind of figure it out on your own? Did someone actually say, hey, sit down, I'm going to show you how this whole process works, just in case it ever comes up?
No, actually, I still want to do that to get like another level of detail.
Travis has got a weekend plan for you. Just sit down.
Yeah.
This is smock or smoke. Smock or smoke.
Yeah.
What I did, I mean, I've had several calls with Travis, mainly with Travis, but also with other clients here and there. And so I've gotten the basic level of knowledge about the different devices and stuff, but no, I haven't yet like gone into a shop and sat down with a bunch of them on the table and sort of
go through each one. Yeah.
There's a lot of variety, and I'd like to understand that.
So you go, Travis. Weekend in Travis's home, and just you'll have every device just laid out for you. This is an RDA. This is an RTA.
I told him, like early on, man. I told him, I was like, look, I have a giant box of stuff. I'm just gonna break this down and send it to you, and like put it in a little box, and I'll send some new stuff. And he was like, that's when he was like, hey, why don't we just find a member that's like close by, and I'll go into their shop and just sit down and have them, and get to see the people, because I think that, that really is where I don't know, Jerad, that's one of the things that you've told me, is that's where you've gotten a lot of inspiration and drive in this is like, talking to people and kind of learning, how they went through this journey to get here. Like you said, playing with their kids and grandkids and so on and so forth. And I think, all four of you can agree and tell Jerad that, in a vape shop is where, a lot of that stuff really happens just naturally, just in and out. So every day. And that's one of the best and most rewarding things with it all, really. Yeah. So
anytime we've ever tried to talk to anybody about the laws in South Carolina, that's the first thing. It's like, come to one of our shops. Yeah. You can actually physically see every ID getting scanned. You can see the age range of people that are coming in to get products, and they'll tell you freely, because they want to tell everybody that, they
want to share their story,
and it wins every time, because that's the proof right there.
Right. And see, and I'll be honest, I was really hard on one of the FDA commissioners, Scott Gottlieb, and I look back on that guy now, and I'm like, man, I kind of wish he was, back. He kind of had some common sense there, and
a tiny sliver of hope.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think is important is to go back to and point back to, is that there were people in that position that at one point their opinion meant something, and I think that's something we all should go back, strum up, and use against what's currently there in place, because then we're forcing them to argue. Someone that, that was there before him. And Scott Gottlieb, one of the main things that he said over and over and over is that the small business owners, the vape shops, the specialty stores, they take, more pride and responsibility in identifying and restricting sales to minors than convenience stores. And that was one of his biggest pushes, is to pull it out of convenience stores and put it into vape shops. And that's where you just kind of see, where he just took a turn, and I guess the powers that be didn't like that,
Yeah.
So the C stores to the rescue.
It was the big boom. I mean, it was just all of a sudden, it went from, having a hard time finding a product to absolutely finding it everywhere. And it was just so quick and so fast. And the products were just flying off the shelves. And I mean, most of us belong to a lot of vape groups, and, everyone just, can't wait to post their next device. And it just seemed like you just bought an RDA yesterday, and I wanted it in red, I wanted it in blue, now I wanted it in black, and it would just happen so fast. I mean, it's crazy from my mom sitting there telling me, I saw this on the Phil Donahue show, go get it and try it, to where it is today. And like we talked about here on the show, my mom's like, hey, I saw this on the Phil Donahue show, it's called Blue, go get it, it's working for everybody, go give it a try. Everybody was praising it. Finally, smokers have a device that's working, to where we're at today. It seems like a blink of an eye. We went from a life-saving product to
getting heckled. People have yelled
poison.
at me and been like, that's going to kill you. Like, what? Like
with the finger.
Yeah. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, but wow, like, it's just crazy. Like, people used to be like, you're doing a great thing, you're helping people quit smoking. Now they're like, that's worse for you than sucking on a Glade plug-in. I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? Like,
Glade
just say my body, my choice. My body, my choice.
Don't go there.
Well, I just think it also lends credence to the idea that people who are indifferent to a particular thing are willing to listen to media or government peddle the story, which is supposed to be the believable one. And you can't believe the boots on the ground person like ourselves to hold up a reasonable argument. So they're gonna fall to what they believe are the experts, when actually the experts are right here, outside of maybe the scientific side of things. We can attest to our own benefit from it. And we can also help them to understand the differences between what they see as the big bad evil thing, which is all over the news, and the big names like Juul. And we can talk about the things that we engage in that they might look bigger and scarier, but they're actually in essence less impactful than, say, a Juul. I mean, most of us are on 6 and 3, and in many cases 0 a lot of the times. So there's a big difference in terms of what the perception is versus what the reality is, and we feel like our voices get silenced too often.
I think we had I was hoping at the time when Trump had to sit down, I thought this is the first step. We're actually going to get a sit down when someone's going to listen to us, and maybe this will break into something more and get us on the 10 o'clock news, the 11 o'clock news, where everybody's watching, and it just seemed like after that meeting, everything just went to the shitter. COVID. Well, COVID happened, but
overshadowed all that.
COVID was in the process. But it just I was hoping that was our window. It felt like that was our opportunity to change the general public's opinion of this product and see it for what it is. And it just never got there. It just, it just went flat and dead. And I know it was an epidemic, with COVID, but it just seemed like, as a lawyer, I'm going to ask you as a lawyer, what needs to happen for us to get back in that news feed? What kind of win do you think we need for us to get back into that feed, to the daily news, where we're going to be on ABC, NBC? That's not negative. I know it's a tough question, man.
Well, it's hard to say, it's hard to say, partly because the news industry has changed so much in the last 5 years. It's like, it depends on where you get your news, and it's like the mainstream news doesn't even carry the real stories anymore. It's all gossip and a horse race. And
what kind of win in court would we need to actually, let's put it that way, what kind of a win would we need in court to get our word out to people to start paying attention that aren't smokers?
Well, I think a big piece of it would be, and I'm not a scientist in this industry, but one thing I'm going to do is when we do this RFA case is try to present more of the science and the data behind the harm reduction, and that's a huge piece that right now these judges are getting just the other side, just the side the FDA wants to present about this supposed youth epidemic, and they don't see the good on the other side, right? So they have nothing to balance it against, really, because we've been limited to the administrative record. So I really think not just a court victory, because let's say even if we win the RFA suit, I mean, that would be massive news, but it still might be portrayed negatively, like in the mainstream press, unless we have the facts regarding the positive side of vaping,
right?
That are part of the case. That has to be part of the narrative the whole way through.
Because you know how it is. It always takes something big to get into that feed, into that, with the news. And I would always wonder what would it take on the vaping side, like, just the FDA folding and admitting they did wrong, or, I mean, that has to be something that should be out there in the news, that, just how this process, and, we joke about them moving the polls all the time, and changing rules and regulations, and pretending like they forgot to tell us that they had a new list of paperwork that they needed to get out there, and a specific check. But I mean, people need to see that, and that's what upsets me the most. It just feels like it's, we say it all the time. It's our circle. Everything just stays within our community. It doesn't seem to get out there. And I think when we do it, when I tell people what's going on, they can't believe it. They're like, the first thing that comes out of a lot of people's mouth is, well, the FDA's got a lot of other more important issues to be dealing with than vaping. And I'm like, well, yeah, okay. Why don't you give the FDA a call and let them know that, but it just seems like, it's just us. It's just this feed that we just keep going through with ourselves over and over and over again. I tweet it, they tweet it, they retweet it, and it stays in there. And, I'll be honest, I'll ask Allison, what you pay. I know you pay a lot of attention to your Twitter, right? I know you do. Do you see names in there that you haven't seen before when you post something? Are you starting to see a little bit of a steady flow, or are you seeing the same names?
I mean, you also really see a lot of what you follow.
Yeah.
So occasionally you'll see something. I did see an uptick in different news outlets posting on, vaping when the Juul got a denial. I think that kind of like woke everybody up, because it's almost like it affects a lot of people that maybe had no idea what was going on. So all of a sudden it was like, oh, now this is what you guys have been yelling about for the past, couple of years. Like, okay, yeah, now I get it, because they're trying to take something away that I use, or something away that I know that my mom used, or someone used it in their life that quit smoking, and all of a sudden they want to pay attention. But we're kind of talking to each other, like we're all kind of on the same playing field. And yes, you can utilize it to tag, people, in power that you think might look at it, but it's very slim, I think it's more of a way for all of us advocates that are just dealing with this on a daily basis to have some common ground and vent, and have somebody actually understand what we're going through. But I mean, it is possible, but I don't see necessarily new names. I mean, the traffic to me is the same, if not more. I mean, I'm on there every single day, and I mean, we're constantly fighting. I mean, and constantly, posting articles and new data, and also, trying to have conversations with people that have a negative outlook, and maybe trying to give them some data, that changes their minds. But some people are just so set in their ways that they don't want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering with you guys, did you guys get any news time for this when you guys, when you're none at all, not even local?
No, well, we did, and I posted in the USVA Facebook page, but I got pretty immediately. I got an email from a Reuters reporter, And so Reuters posted a story, and it was a pretty good story. They quoted me. They quoted one of the other attorneys for the other petitioners. But I think, and now that I think about it, this victory sort of fell through the cracks in terms of media coverage because it came after 2 losses in other circuits.
Oh yeah.
And so right now it's kind of a wash, and it's like, so whereas if we have a clear victory in another case that's not counteracted by a loss on the same, right now it's unclear. It's like there's no clear resolution. But if we win a clear victory on some issue, then I think that will break through. Certainly if the FDA has to go back to the drawing board and, and redraw the regulation.
That changes everything.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Paul, you've been quiet. I give you the floor.
I'm very curious about a lot of what's happening, because I hope in the near future that this actually sets precedent for other states and other groups from around the United States to actually start winning cases like this, take the fight back to the FDA and say, look, you've done the wrong thing. How about we sit down, we all sit down, we go over the PMTA process, we take this out, we take that out, and we do separate you into different categories: open systems, closed systems, semi-closed systems, liquid manufacturing, development, all of it. All of it needs its own little bracket, not under one huge umbrella. And look, hands down, Jerad, you've done an amazing job with having that court listen. And the judges, obviously, they might have a family member or someone that they know, or one of their staffers that actually vapes and says, no, do the right thing here, help us out, because the FDA doesn't know what they're doing anymore.
Yeah.
Simple.
No, well, I'll leave you with this, and talking about just having a reasonable application process, right? Like, I mean, if the FDA is going to regulate it and require an application, let's have a reasonable process. The example that I will give to the court that really should bring home our RFA case comes from the FDA itself, because what did they do with premium cigars? You remember right before the deadline hit, they said, oh, wait, don't file your applications. We don't want to run you out of business, premium cigar makers. We're going to do our own research, and we're going to set the parameters for what is, safe for this segment of the industry. It's like food safety regulations, right? It's completely absurd for the FDA to say, we want every mom and pop manufacturer to submit 1 million pages. You have to hire a consultant who's going to charge you $10,000 or $50,000 to summarize all the literature that everybody else is supposed to submit also. Yeah. The FDA needs to read all that themselves and just tell us what they want. It's completely absurd, the whole process.
Yeah. From start to finish. And trust me, I've been in the industry now, for a number of years, and what I'm seeing in the United States and the whole process, and to put it bluntly, they honestly did not look at any of the science. As simple as that. And also, probably the biggest one was the flavor study that the FDA rejected, that was predominantly done in the United States with 69,000 to 70,000 participants, that Dr. Farsalinas put forward, and it was rejected. For what reason? Or because we don't want to read it and we don't really understand what we're reading.
Yeah.
And that's another key point to be brought up. And that, there's parts of the Farsalinas report that should be used in some of these cases leading up, especially in the states where flavor bans are coming into play. They're finding out now that you ban something in those states, combustible sales are going back up, kids are going back to smoking cigarettes. Not using vapor products, which we know are much safer. Well, where's that being spoken? It's not. That's also being pushed under the carpet. But there are studies out there that need to be brought to their attention, and to show them that This industry for ever so long has been self-regulating. When there was a problem, say with diacetyl or cinaldehyde, it was removed from the manufacturing of liquids. Liquid makers went back to the drawing board and said, look, if it's bad, let's get rid of it. It was us that did it. It wasn't the FDA sticking a popsicle up our butt. It was the industry that actually did it. And this is what kills me. Like, myself as a liquid developer, they haven't listened to any of this, but they're lumping every single same product, every single variant into the same bracket. Why? It doesn't make sense.
Because they're understaffed.
Oh,
well, and then they try to say that study wasn't product specific, right? So you're not showing your actual footprint of how many people you're helping actually quit smoking. That was how they changed that, like, oh, well, that's not product specific, so it doesn't count.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a bit of the heartstring argument to be made too, right? I mean, anytime you can put the kids out front and say that the reason why we're doing this is for our future. We don't want our future generations hooked on this horrible thing. You start pulling at the heartstrings of several people. They don't just have to be the parent who is concerned about their kid. It could be somebody who's in a situation of being a judge or something like that, and they feel like they have a duty to protect the public at large from this big thing, and they don't want to see the smaller picture. I think one thing that gets ultimately lost too, and that these judges don't get to hear because unfortunately maybe they are a little, judicial in their presentation, meaning it's just, it's an argument based on a piece of paper, but they don't even get to hear the sentiment. Do you know what I mean? In a case in this most recent case, you said you couldn't present some of the factual evidence, the stories, the journeys, the things that really could be impact statements in a case. But I feel like we're muted in terms of our sentiment, is that there's not one vapor. Sure, we might make the side argument that if we had a kid and we found out the kid was vaping, we'd be far more relieved to find out that they were vaping and not smoking, which I think is a fair argument, but that doesn't mean that we want the kids vaping, and they don't want to listen to that sentiment. There's not one vapor at an adult stage who's engaging in tobacco harm reduction that openly is like, screw it, let the kids vape too. No one's saying that, and they don't seem to, they miss that point, that it's about our preservation and our right to have something at our disposal that we choose to be a harm reduction methodology and cessation method, and they just miss that completely. They just look at kids.
Yeah. And I think the reason, the short answer is it was a political decision that was made early in the process, and the denials were just, calculated to reach that conclusion.
If nobody doesn't speak, I will hit you with another lawyer joke, and I don't want to use the next one.
You didn't have to go further down the wormhole.
No.
There's probably ones that were like,
No, they're all
88th.
bad. They're all bad. I didn't want.
They're pretty bad. Yeah,
they're pretty bad.
I think too, like, I don't think there's one vape shop owner that would not comply with whatever the FDA would throw at them. Put it in licensed vape shops only. Make us have age verification. Hit us with big penalties and fines if we do mess up and sell to youth. Like, that would help stop it, because 90% of these, sales to youth are not happening in vape shops. So that is a real way to solve the problem. So why is that not even, it's like, it can't even be something that's put on the table.
But do you feel, though, Allison, I hate bringing this up, but do you feel in the beginning that was the battle between the online seller and the vape shop and the C-stores?
I know for a fact, online sales, there some of them had age verification. I know we did have age verification. We needed a copy of the picture of the driver's license, front and back, because we have an ability to scan it. And then we also had to hold it up next to a picture of your face. And then we do fraud prevention, so we can run and make sure that your address matches and that it's not, anything that was, fishy, we would not ship it. Yeah. But that's what we were doing. Now we don't ship online anymore because of the PACT Act. But with, in store, like, we have that. And it's not an expensive thing to have to be able to implement something where you can scan an ID. We also have a chat program that's free through GroupMe, and we have 16 locations. And these people will literally be like, a woman came in here with a kid that was under the age. Clearly, the kid was asking the questions about the products. I told them that they had to leave. This is what they're wearing. This is what they're driving. Don't sell to them. Like,
Yeah.
so I don't understand.
That's
Like,
awesome.
that's easy. That's an easy thing to do, though. These are not expensive and even a free option to have. So it's like, we will do all of this. We'll do whatever you want. Just don't take it away from the adults. But that proves that it's not about the kids, because there are viable options and avenues.
Yeah, there's some stores here, some supermarkets now that won't sell you alcohol if you're with a teenager. They'll say, "I'm sorry, you can't sell you alcohol. You're with a minor," and I'm just like, "Huh?"
I understand your part regarding fines, Ali. You'll take Australia, for instance.
I don't know if I go that far.
You guys are crazy with the fines, man. Woo.
With the fines that they're handing out now.
Insane.
And we're not talking pocket change here, not $500, or a carton of beer. We're talking, upwards of 80 plus thousand for a fine.
That's crazy.
Well, there's 2 cases in court now that they've taken to court, and we're expecting one of these to be well over $100,000 fine. But yes, they were doing the wrong thing. But when they brought in the prescription model here, and this is a really interesting one, Jared, take note of this, that the prescription model was brought in October 1 last year. Now, you have to get a prescription to have a liquid that has nicotine in it. But the pharmacies that are selling these products, or the nicotine, are being fined now for advertising that they have these products on their website. It makes 0 sense. They want us to go to the pharmacy, but now they're finding the pharmacy. What? Someone fucked up somewhere along
Australia
the line. I'll tell you that right now.
Someone got bit with one of those 80,000 things that can kill you there in Australia.
Hey guys, I'm gonna before the next lawyer joke drops, I'm gonna drop out.
We're done. I'm not gonna hit you with another word. I knew it would lighten the mood. So hey,
my wife's gonna be waiting on me to eat some dinner here. So
don't get yourself in trouble.
Yeah,
I need you to fight another day.
He is a lawyer. He could talk himself out of it. I'm sure.
I'm sure he can't litigate that one and nearly.
It doesn't work at home.
Exactly.
Well, okay, Jerad, we want to thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. I have all of Jared's Twitter account, his website as well, guys. If you guys want to learn a little bit more about Jerad, they will be in the header, and I will put them back in chat again. So. Go check out his stuff. And again, thank you, Jerad. Everybody else want to say thank you to Jerad.
Thanks, Jerad.
Thank you very much for all your hard work, Jerad. Keep it up.
Thank you, man. Keep it up.
Thank you for having me.
Back here after the next one.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you.
I want to see you on the ABC Nightly News one day.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see.
I hope so.
Good night.
All right. Thank you, Jerad.
Bye-bye.
Good work.
Boom. Now we're down to 5.
And now
6 entered, 5 remain.
Travis.
It's like a escape room.
Yeah. Is this the part where we bring the thumb screws out for Travis?
I don't have any vapor jokes. No.
It sounds fun. It sounds
We've already heard all the vapor jokes.
I'm a fan of tactical questioning. You really get some good results.
Perfect.
Only joking, Travis. Only joking.
Hey,
all right.
Have you got to? Are you in court with them when you're there? Are you in court as well with them when they're?
No.
Okay,
no.
Experience all that.
Yeah, no. But I get first. I get first dibs at what we're gonna take. What's gonna take place going in, and then obviously the first read whenever it comes out, and yeah, it's something that I would like to do, and definitely. Yeah, if we got into the Supreme Court, you can guarantee there's going to be a good bit of people that were going to be there.
So. Will you be able to control your temper? That's the question.
No, he's not allowed anywhere near anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty like I guess when I'm quiet, everybody should be happy, because I'm quick to vocalize and call something for what it is. So
yeah.
And yeah.
Well, if it gets to that point, that's nightly news information that, I mean, it sucks, but that's the process that we're in right now. I mean, if we don't get the general public to see our side of it, it's a battle I don't think we can win, because we need them to open their eyes. And that's why I always use the coffee thing with them, or the cake. I say, well, how would you like to go to Starbucks someday and all you can order is black coffee? How would you feel about that? Or how about just vanilla cake for the rest of your fucking life? No chocolate, no strawberry.
Cake.
Yeah,
Tobacco.
God damn it. Timmy, you never sounded better,
flavor.
Tim.
Yeah.
And change that up a little bit and tell them that all they could order is black coffee decaffeinated.
Decaf. Throw that fucking
Oh,
tobacco flavored decaf coffee.
There would be a riot in the streets, I think.
Yeah, there would. And that's part of the problem. Is one of the biggest problems is that we have very little that is on our side that's advocating loudly for us. It's easy. And earlier y'all mentioned the go-to. It's what I call it, is the go-to, and it's the children. Yeah. It's a point that if you argue, you look like an asshole, and if you disagree with, obviously you look like an asshole. Yeah. So and these are things that we've discussed before, is like really just trying to bridge that gap between an organization, an advocacy organization that reaches out to some of these loudest voices that are against us. And, there's a probability there where, it really depends on how you reach out to them and what the response is going to be. But, strategically all the way around, it would be it would be interesting to see how they would respond. So,
actually, isn't the answer? Well, I was going to say, isn't the answer to that, how many vapors does it take to change a light bulb? And I get it, and they're disposable. I was going to say 3 to buy new ones and 1 to sing about how much they miss the old one.
You get this. You get this, Paul. There you go. No, it's just it's tough fighting the government. It's funny because I was driving to San Francisco today, and my uncle looks over me, and he's old school, Sicily, America, and we're getting to the San Mateo Bridge, and he looks over at me and he says, "You know what? This fucked up." And I said, "What's that, Uncle Pete?" He goes, "We pay taxes for roads. We pay taxes for the roads and gas, but yet I have to pay $7 to go across this bridge that I already paid for," and he just started going in, and I'm looking over at him, and I'm just like thinking to myself, he's kind of right. I'm thinking, why are we paying $7 to go across this bridge? And he's just looking at me like, we're paying this much. He knows to the cent how much in gas tax goes to roads, your fees at the DMV and all this nonsense. He's going through all this, and he's like, and I said, yeah, you know what? Because it hit me really bad. It was a couple years ago when I drove from Buffalo to Philadelphia, and it cost me $45 in tolls to go from Buffalo to Philadelphia just to drive on the stretch of road. And it doesn't seem like a lot because they get you. It's like 35 cents here, 45 cents here. But by the time you get to your destination, you're like, dude, I spend $45 to get here.
I'm in Austin.
Yeah, $20 to over the GWB.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm in Austin, Texas. So like you have 2 options: be stuck in traffic or go on the toll road. And yeah, man, that at 35 cents is cheap. It's $1.25 a pop here every time, like every 6 miles or something like that. And really and truly, there's times where you just have no other choice. And it sucks to see that, the way that trickles down. And that's something that I have, a lot of conversations with members with, is it's like, look at what we're doing is through taxation. We're funding the government, and then the government is basically we're funding a law firm and funding a fight against the government, but yet the government's using our money to fight back against us, and win, and we're at a disadvantage there, and that is one of those things where it's like, it's a hard battle to fight, and it's one where, you know, you have to be small, you have to be mobile, and you have to be able to adapt and maneuver in any direction, even if that means moving sideways to go forward, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Hold on, you
yeah,
have toll roads in Texas?
yeah.
Everybody's
oh, you're
got 'em,
right.
John.
I had no idea. I mean, as a truck
North Carolina
driver, my favorite part of the country to go through is Texas because I can go as fast as I wanted to go through Texas in a semi, and it was great. New Mexico and Texas, baby, just hit it
Yeah.
and go. And then when you got to Dallas or Houston, you had to slow down a little bit.
A little
And then
bit,
once
yeah.
you get past there, I had no idea you guys had those there too, because I think the speed limit on the freeway is 75 there.
Yeah, on the free roads, yeah, what we call them 75. And on the toll road, the best part is the toll road, it's 85 in some spots. And for me, my normal, regardless if it's free or the toll road, my traveling speed is 85, 90. So that's just where I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
So it's one of those, like, around here you have to, because you got to go a long distance, you know. Time is money. I got shit to do. So, you know, some people drive in traffic. I travel through traffic.
Yeah.
So that's the way I work.
Travis just gets in his car, he puts on his driving gloves.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I'm the guy in the truck that asshole that almost sideswiped me. But I was totally clear. I had plenty of space. I was good the whole way. My blinker, I'm not asking.
Yeah. You're not the guy in the diesel truck, are you? That's blowing a little bit of black smoke in people's faces with their
not black smoke. Not black smoke. No. Not black smoke. No. No, not like that.
We get back to vaping.
Yeah.
Anybody got a question for Travis?
Well, I did. Yeah. So, I mean, kind of tethering off of that. I mean, obviously, you know, you've employed Jerad to come in and fight the MDO aspect of vaping, but do you foresee this particular unique battle being a stepping stone to potentially bigger things in terms of trying to sway the general trajectory of where this is going? Or do you think that being objective, that, you know, you might have a victory for now, and granted you'll fight back, but do you think this will broaden the perspective and kind of open up different avenues for fighting equally, so that, you know, maybe we can battle some of these ridiculous, you know, flavor bans and things of that nature if we can get a launching pad on the MDOs?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You know, and that's a lot of what, you know, like again earlier that I was saying that we learned going through this MDO, the oral arguments, and that Jerad's going into court and, you know, arguing, and what we're finding out from each one of those is little bitty details that is only going to help in moving forward, that allows us to tell our membership, hey, this is what we're running into, this is what we're interpreting, here's the arguments that they're making. So, you know, any of these things here, if there's holes in your PMTA, let's update these. Let's do some amendments. Let's communicate and just get everybody nice and tight, because ultimately at the end of the day with the RFA, and the RFA is really, really simple. I mean, if you look into it, and I know hopefully, you know, you guys will have Jerad back or myself and Jerad, and we can kind of go through these points, and anybody can look it up. It's the APA RFA, the Regulatory Flexibility Act, and it's 7 pages. Ultimately. So, and it's really simple, and something that is overlooked, and it's been displayed a little bit in some action that we've seen in the past, especially whenever you have the Small Business Administration and the Office of Advocacy that are sending out letters during the OMB's meetings on a comment period on what these regulations and the PMTAs would do to a small business. We noticed every time that these, you know, agencies got involved, these administrations got involved, that there was an automatic cutoff. You know, that cutoff happened, and we started looking at it, and I was familiar with the RFA. A lot of people, you know, I don't know if y'all remember, but December 15th, 2015 at 12:03 midnight is whenever the official wording was pushed into giving the FDA the authority to create the deeming rule for vaping. That happened. And December 15th, 2015. And I automatically stumbled across somebody that mentioned the RFA, and I looked into it, dug into it, and I just started screaming about it at that point. Like, how is this possible? We don't have any guidelines. We don't have anything right now. And then within months, they turned around and dropped the deeming rule, and then they froze the market. And then if you start looking at that and you apply what the RFA is, and at the basis of the RFA, it applies to us and many other industries and many other agencies. And it could, like, as you say, it's going to open up not only for us, but it will open up, a lot for other, types of industries that are in the country that can really start to argue against, like Jerad said, is we have, agencies. And that was the basis. A lot of people don't understand the separation of powers and what our original lawsuit was on. And that's what that is it's being able to have, the people that we elect and represent create these laws and create this stuff because it's well thought out and it has to go through a process. And right now, the TCA, what happened in 2009 is they just delegated that responsibility, that authority, that enforcement ability, that say of any sort directly to the FDA. And in doing that, their discretion has allowed, their enforcement is so broad that you could really just go any which way. They could deem, a toothpick or a glass of water a tobacco product, you know, and there's no oversight. There's nothing. There's no one keeping them in line, and that's why we have to take them to court. And unfortunately, if the government, what they've done is they've tied their own hands, and any action coming from the government at this point would be that to stop any discretion that the FDA has in this industry. That's the only move. And that's honestly, that in my opinion, that should be the number one thing everybody should be watching for, be looking for, is that one single action right there is what could really, really stop it all in its tracks. We're stuck then. We have to comply. We have to figure out a way to get through this process for small businesses and it be affordable. And, we're constantly at all times with the USVA looking at how we can do that and how we can make, all of this affordable, stretch out this time frame, have communication through the administrative process with the FDA, with the Office of Science, and really kind of dial in through communication, through providing timelines and getting acceptance from them on a testing procedure. So, but that also requires, a lot of people, and it's the most important thing right now is everybody, anything that you can do is get, maybe that's a good point. So, but with that, the main thing that you have to focus on is being sure that all of the PMTAs, all of the people that are being represented in any of this stuff are having, every aspect tight, absolutely tight. So that way, if there's any push from the FDA that comes in and says, hey, what about this? What about this? What about this? We have to make sure that, it's not something that's just been crammed into a folder and then submitted to the FDA. It's constantly having to be looked at, updated, and monitored. So, and a lot of people need to understand after the approval process. Let's just say you get approved. You get approved to be sold on the market. That's whenever the real work really begins. At that point, is staying on the market. So
stay there. Continue to prove why. And the standards clearly can change at any moment.
All the time.
I think another benefit too of these lawsuits that we're doing, I think a lot of them are kind of like a Hail Mary, like with these MDO appeals, and I think that it's more valuable because we're actually hearing in a court of law what the FDA wants.
Right.
So if we can fill all the gaps and cover all the things they want, then how can they give us an MDO again on something like a synthetic product if we've covered all those bases at this point?
Bingo.
Because now this is what you stated in court that you wanted from us. We've provided it. So I mean, if that doesn't show that they're constantly moving the goalposts, I don't know what does, you know?
Right.
They'll get a new form and a new checkbox, Allie.
Right.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah, no.
937/B.2.0.
And again, it's one of these things that whenever you start looking, you know, when you start digging into what the RFA is and you know, the Regulatory Flexibility Act, when you're diving into it and it's 7 pages, it's really simple. And all of that you just outlined, you know, as long as this is enforced and it's enforced by the court to be a good argument and upheld in court, then at that point, the FDA then has to comply with the guidelines of the RFA. So any of these changes, any of these things that they do, a clock starts, it restarts, and it starts, and it restarts, and it gives small businesses time because it no longer says, well, you know, the FDA has been allowed to describe the 2 business type structure that they have. So it's more than 150 employees making more than $5 million, you're a large scale business. Under that number, you're a small scale business. Well, guess what? You know, 87% of that is a small business that can't and is nowhere close to 5 million and 100 employees. Yeah. You know, that gets even smaller. So
I mean, Azar himself, didn't he even go on TV when that whole thing was going on with Trump and state that he had to create a small business pathway? Like, they know that. They know that
multiple times.
And it wasn't done. Yeah.
No. And that's what I'm saying is, you know, that's whenever we have an opportunity to go back to these times, go back and point back to these things and bring that up in court and say, what about this? Yeah. Because a lot of us, I think we can all sit here and agree, a lot of us, how many administrations have we been through in the industry? You know, and each time, whether it's a, you know, a re-election of a current president and they run 2 terms, we still have to deal with this stuff. Whether it's 1, we're still dealing with the stuff, and it's only constantly getting worse through politics. Yeah. And you know, that's where we really got to just stop and take a step back and reevaluate which way is forward. And that's going to be one of the biggest things and the biggest questions that we all have to figure out.
Well, I got a question for you. I mean, why do you think Biden's been so quiet?
Well,
he's kept it out of his.
I just don't think he's there.
I think, with that too.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's wound him up just yet to say that, and they've not typed that in just yet.
Earpiece.
Exactly. You know, wind up and then scan something. Yeah, no. Who knows? No, it's not on their radar just because
bring up vaping.
Yeah, it's a go-to. That's a winner right there. Yeah, no.
It's time for my bath. What did you say?
Pudding? Who said pudding?
Pudding. You know? Someone say pudding.
Yeah.
It's not going to work with him. We all know how much Biden loves the kids.
I just think I find it funny that, you know, it was there at the end with Trump, and I thought somehow, some way it was going to go into this new administration, and they pretty much kept it out of topic. I mean, it's never discussed at all. I can't even think of the last time he even brought it up, or one of his staff members have brought it up.
Well,
it's
if
never
I had to
up.
take a stab at that, John, I would say it's kind of like, you know, you buy a Volkswagen and then you drive around and you just see everybody has fucking Volkswagens, right? So I think when Trump was around, all senses were heightened because we really were kind of going through the whole Valley thing at that time. So, I mean, at the time, it seemed to be on his radar. Yeah. Not only was it the kids, but we were also combating the idea that people were vaping and getting deathly ill and dying and ending up on lung machines and things of that nature. So I think it was more, it was under the microscope a little bit more readily than, say, now it's just kind of fallen off the radar. Now it's kind of like somewhere in the weeds and all of these litigational arguments.
Well, I think he kind of, for me, what I got from him when he brought it all up is I kind of felt like he was looking at it not as a president but as a businessman, and I think that was the difference that you get.
That's why we had a chance. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. He's looking at it as in a business sense and not looking at it as the president of the United States. And I think he wanted to give this industry the benefit of the doubt and let them at least have an opportunity to sit down and explain what was going on. Now, could he have picked better people to be there? You know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Romney.
And there were
didn't
some
need to be
people
there.
that shouldn't have been there.
Well,
We know. Yeah.
a lot of people, you know, a lot of what a lot of people don't know is that there were some pretty big staffers that were directly in his White House administration that went to work for Juul during the time all of this is going down. So, you know, ultimately, you're right. Trump is a businessman, and he always has been, and he always will be, and that's why we do need a certain type of thinking whenever it comes to, you know, deregulation. And, you know, one of the best things I think could have ever happened is for every new regulation, two got to go. What happened with that? Where's that at? You know, and also the best thing that could have ever happened is if that was truly where he was, and that's, you know, he wanted to see the industry succeed. I think if anything moving forward, just don't ever say that he supports it or thinks it's a good thing, or even talk about it, because I think that's where it all began is the fact that he was being pulled two ways. Is he was being pulled by his base that strongly supported him on this stuff, and then he was also being pulled by the left that went to the go-to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's how this became a political issue, which it's not. It's a public health issue.
It's a public health issue.
Right.
I've never seen a public health agency care more about what these people think over what actual users and people that have had their lives changed from it think. That doesn't make any sense.
Right. But again, you know, we fight a lot of things, and, you know, I know a lot of us say that we fight big tobacco, which we all know we do, and we fight the campaigns that are against us, but we also fight pharmaceutical companies.
Yes.
So because, you know, those pharmaceutical companies, where we lose a lot in this media battle that that we were all discussing, how we lose that battle is when you start going and you look at the board members that are sitting on Pfizer, and then you go and look at the same board members that sat on at Fox Media, all right, or CNN or NBC or any of these places, and you'll start to see a lot of these names just go right in line with one another. So of course they're going to control, you know, the narrative. They're going to control the information. And right now, that's the biggest downfall that we all have, is it's so easy to scare the public. But I'll be honest, I mean, I'm hoping that we start to see a swing in a different direction, especially after what we've experienced with COVID, and maybe where a lot of the people are setting with, you know what, I don't want to go through that again. You know, I'm not necessarily going to believe in and read into what I'm being fed here. And they have, you know, start to have some skeptical feelings towards the media and kind of know what they do and how they do it. And again, it's going to take a big win of some sort to really, you know, encourage the public and get them to start going back again. Because if you remember in 2014, what was the word of the year in 2014? Anybody remember?
Oh, 2014.
Vape.
Yeah.
Vape.
Yeah,
the word of the year.
The verb.
Yeah. So verb. So it's one of those things that, you know, you wish you could go back to that time. I think we all could. We wish we could. But now here we are, and we have a big uphill battle. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I think the most success that we could have is just showing the responsibility and the level of compassion that the small business owners have, and really keep those specialty shops in place and try and figure out a way, no matter what, always figure out a way to comply and keep that, you know, complying, keep that cost low, and still be able to stay in business. So
is Phil Donahue still alive? Get him back on TV and get him to do another show on another vape product.
Yeah, it's funny because you probably see a lot of those people go the other direction, but it's funny that all this kind of came up because I remember when Biden was confronted on the whole idea about, you know, what was he going to do about vaping, because it all of a sudden transferred to him. Yeah, and I remember he said, well, you know, we're going to follow the science. And maybe that's why it got a little quiet, because if you really want to talk about people following the science most recently, somebody stuck their foot in their mouth pretty heavy. So he may not want to regurgitate that statement anymore, because I think you probably find a lot of people going, I don't know if your science is really the science we should be listening to.
Right.
Yeah.
And the FDA knows that they don't have, the trust of the public anymore. I mean, the fact that Caliph even came out and did that webinar about clearing up misinformation and regaining public trust,
Sure.
and then put out a slew of vaping e-cigarette videos, yesterday or, day
Yeah.
before yesterday. And I'm like, this is not doing that. You're just giving us more of the same crap. That's not true. So this isn't how you regain the trust of the public, because we know better.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's
I
a
don't know
hard
what
one.
to do.
Keep doing what we're doing. Keep
That's
talking
it.
about it.
Well,
Keeping
that,
it
of
relevant.
course, we're always going to keep doing what we're doing.
Mhm.
It's just we have to, like, we bring it up all the time. It's just us having to continue to share our stories, no matter where we're at. No matter if, well, I wasn't going to say no matter if they want to listen to you or not. If they don't want to listen to you, don't waste your time. But they're willing to listen to you. Share that story. I mean, share your story. I mean,
Yeah.
we all share it with each other in vape shops. I mean, that's like the first thing we talk about when everybody was heading to, it's like, when'd you quit? What flavor did you use? How'd you get by? What did you do on the hard nights and the hard days? And we share those stories all the time. And of course we always ask what flavor are you vaping? That's like,
Mhm.
that was number one, really, to be
Yep.
honest with you. What flavor is that? It smells
Mhm.
good.
Yep.
Well, I think for me, though, I think the one thing that's sort of happened more recently, though, is I've found myself falling. I was mentioning it in in the group chat before we even got on the show, is that I've found myself in more advantageous positions to have open conversations with people about the whole subject. And a lot of times the lead in is that, yeah, I do this live thing every Wednesday night, where I'm an advocate for vaping, and we talk positively on the subject just due to a lot of the negative connotation around it, and I've been able to garner the audience of some people that just really knew nothing about it. They don't really they heard a few things on the news or saw a headline story here or there, but you're able to offer your perspective on it and explain to them that there's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on, and they're not getting the real story. So whether or not I sit there and try to convince them that it's done wonders for me, it's more about clearing up some of the myth
Yep.
that they might exist with, and that it's this bad thing, and it's like, yeah, truthfully, yeah, I mean, kids are kids. They got their hands on it because it was this cool thing or this new. I'm not the forbidden fruit they weren't supposed to have. I mean, we were all kids. We all did stupid shit growing up.
I was a good kid, Tim.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
I
know
was a
you
good
were the angel.
I was an angel. I was an altar boy. I was an altar boy.
When would you say the decline started, though?
Yeah, I'm not, that's for a whole nother show, man.
Okay, all right. So yeah, we won't.
That's
go
for
there.
the Friday Night BS show, man.
But-
Girls, just say girls.
Yeah, it was all. It started with cooties. That's
Yeah,
exactly
girls.
when it started. But that said, I it's been refreshing to be able to talk to someone who's sort of objective about it. It's like, well, at least I'm able to present that story, and whether or not they go run to their girlfriends over a glass of wine and talk about, all this thing that they heard today, maybe, just maybe, they have a different view, so that when the negative stuff does start showing up in front of them, they have a better understanding about why that negative stuff shows up. And maybe what you're seeing really isn't the true truth. It's a lot of exaggeration going on. So
Yeah, it always, it surprises me that when you become a parent, you just seem to forget those stories. You know what I mean? It's just like, yeah, you want your kids to, you want your kids to be, the goal is for your kids to do better than you. That's the goal of every parent, is you want better for your kids than you had growing up, and having a better life and career and family and all that stuff. But it's just like, those stories are there, and I think it's, trying to not remember those stories, and not thinking that at one point in time you did do those things, and you understand the lengths that you went to get alcohol, to get cigarettes and all this other nonsense, and just to think, oh, this is a better generation, they're not going to do the same thing. An adolescent's an adolescent. I'm sorry, it's the same thing. They're going to do it.
And there's way more access now too.
Yeah,
It's so
yeah.
much easier to get it.
Oh, way more. I had to go
Yeah.
through so many loopholes, just to
I used
get
to
something.
stand at the deli on the corner and ask truckers to buy me cigarettes.
Yeah.
And my mom actually caught me doing this and was like, "What the heck?
Yeah.
You're gonna get kidnapped and murdered."
Yeah, I stole a cigarette from a priest. I mean, altar boy, and to get my cigarette, it was there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's just funny. Go ahead, Paul.
No, we were all crafty little bastards growing up. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you're from in the world. We were all crafty little bastards.
Yeah.
Simple, in one way, shape, or form. Whether it was booze, cigarettes, weed, borrowing cars
Weed.
without someone.
You did weed
without someone's permission.
Dude, I've been having to shave since I was 15. I've been buying cigarettes, just walking in and buying cigarettes since I was 15, man. Like seriously, I mean, it's just, you know. So,
I had a buddy of mine his freshman year in high school. He looked like he was 30 years old, had a full beard, hairy arms, chest. I was just like, dude, you're a man. Are you sure you're not a man?
Go buy me some beer.
High testosterone.
What are you doing Friday?
Yeah.
What are you doing Friday?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
We were doing anything back then, really.
Mm-hmm.
And these days, I wouldn't want to grow up these days, to be quite honest, as a kid, because some of us had the internet like in the early days, but what they've got now in front of them, and they still whinge.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Seriously?
Yeah.
They can do whatever the hell they want. They've got everything.
They do.
They've got the world at their fingertips, and they still whinge.
Yeah.
So if you're listening, kids, wake up.
Yeah, I saw a kid the other day arguing with his mother, and he was countering his argument using fucking Google. Using Google to counter his parents. Yeah, his argument. I was like, dude, that is some balls right there, man.
Wow.
She's trying. Was throwing out something. I don't know what they were talking about, but he was throwing out statistics, and he was Googling this shit. He's like, no, you're wrong, Mom. And he's like, 22.7%. I'm like, dude, the kid is arguing with his mom using Google. How can you win as a parent?
I pay for that.
You're grounded from your phone. I'm taking your internet access away. You're gonna have to spell words on your own now.
There's like all these kids sitting outside on the bench, and they're all like this. I literally pulled up and was like, that is the saddest thing I've ever seen. It's the nicest day. It's been raining like crazy. It's beautiful out, and they're literally all outside. Phone in the face, like this close. Every single one of them. I'm like, that's so sad.
Yeah. There's that meme that I posted on our group page where it said from 1980 to 1983, my parents didn't even know where I was.
No, when the street lights came on, that's when I had to come home. That was it. That was the only rule.
I have a kid.
As long as you're home by dark, right? And if you're asked to do the washing up, do the washing up. But for the rest of that time frame, like all through the 80s, where have you been? I don't know.
I'm at Brad's house, Mom. Okay.
Yep. Well, Amber. Yep. Thank you. I was caught like that, but I was asleep on a golf course. You won't go there. I was 15.
Yeah, you didn't. You were told not to talk to strangers. Stay away from white vans. Right.
Okay.
And that was about it.
I was told to stay away from the ice cream truck, actually.
The ice cream truck or the white van. Yeah, stay away from the white van with the balloons in there.
I got none of that. Yeah, I got none of that.
I grew up from 12 until the age of 12. I grew up in South Philly, so I was told, you stay within the 4-block radius, and and everybody knew who I was, and they knew you by your grandparents back then in the early 70s. So they knew, oh, you're Javon, you're the barber's grandson. So that, you couldn't fuck up. If you did something stupid, it got home, And when I moved to California, I learned real quick that I had access to the whole, honest to God, I felt like I had access to the whole world. Because I could go wherever I wanted to out here. It's the country. I get on my bike. I could ride 6 miles to the lake or go swim all day, come home. And, I didn't have that general fear that I had living in, South Philadelphia.
I grew up in New York and I couldn't leave the development and everybody knew me.
I could imagine a girl. Yeah.
Travis, I've got one for you.
Mhm.
What if you gave a teenager a bag of nails now and a hammer? Do you think any of these little bastards know what to do with them?
Yeah, they would probably hammer their hand or their fist together or something onto a piece of wood, because I mean, in reality, what I see with the kids nowadays is, no matter what, if you give them a perfect life, they're going to do something to create suffering, because suffering is something that builds character. And if you don't give them the correct, if they don't experience a certain type of suffering, we're all bound to create that in some way.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you give them a hammer and a bag of nails, guaranteed that you would really scratch your head and just like, did you really just do that? Right? Did you seriously? You did that. That's what we're gonna
Free
do.
belly button piercing.
Yeah, you know, my nose. I'm gonna pierce my nose.
How do I get this out of my hand, Dad?
Yeah. I could just imagine, like, there'd be emergency rooms all over the US just lined up with kids with, I got my nail somewhere. I wasn't.
Right through the hand.
Detergent. Like what would shock you? Like who eats a Tide Pod? I
dude. The cinnamon challenge, then you know, snorting the condoms. Seriously.
Licking the toilets during COVID.
Yeah.
That was
there you go. There you go. Gorilla glue.
Yes.
Gorilla glue.
Yeah. It's the TikTok challenge, baby. Get out there and do it.
And really and truly, there's a lot of people, you know, there's a lot of documentaries out there of kids that have accidentally killed themselves on these TikTok challenges. So you really want to talk about, you know, what the epidemics are, and there's a TikTok epidemic.
Social media.
There's, you know, you start going down the list, man, and there's so many other things, and the biggest thing to remember, and that I tell everybody, and that no matter what, what I found the best response to the no-win argument, right, is those kids are going to be adults one day.
Yep.
They're
going to run the country. They're going to run the country someday.
A lot faster than they're going to stay smaller. You know what I mean? So they're going to become an adult faster, to where they can make these decisions all on their own. And in my opinion, you know, for my kids, I don't want them on. I don't want them to have anything. I want them to be absolutely.
I love that.
Stupidity is the epidemic. Yes. But, you know, I want them to have, whenever they're an adult, I want them to have every option available to them if they find themselves addicted to something.
Right.
So, you know, and more options, the better.
Yeah. It's funny because a lot of people I've noticed here in my own city, it's gotten younger as far as positions of authority here in the city. So I am starting to notice a lot more of the early 30s running for city councilman, and that scares me because I don't think they're ready. You know what I mean? I really don't feel like they're ready. It's just like, what have you gone through? And you know, they've been, I'm not going to shit on a generation. I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop. Yeah. Before I say something, then I'll have every Gen Z after me.
You don't want that.
I already raised 3 Gen Zs. I think I did pretty good because they're all well established and got good jobs and got families, and they're taking care of themselves. And
that's
I
about
don't
how
have
you
to worry
raise them more than the environment they grew, or the, you know, the influence. Like you were the influence. That's
When my son came home from kindergarten, his first day, my oldest son, he comes up to me and he says, "Dad, 2 things you need to change in your life." And I go, "Huh?" And you're 5, right? You're 5 in kindergarten. I go, "Okay, hit me. I'm curious. Go ahead, hit me." "We need to recycle at home." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Stop throwing cans and bottles in the garbage can. We need to start recycling them. And 2, you need to stop smoking." And that's from my teacher. I looked at him. I said, "Well, number 1, your teacher is not there to teach you about me to quit smoking, nor about recycling. She needs to teach you math, English, and the rest of this stuff, and quit worrying about what I'm doing in my own home."
Right.
That's it. That's the teachers, you know.
Yep.
Yeah. You forget that they have a majority of your child's day is with that person, and their influence on what type of person your child is going to end up being is a lot to do with, you know, especially junior high and up. You know, kindergarten to 6th grade, they're all lovey-dovey-dovey, but once you get into middle school and high school, who are your teachers? You know, are how liberal are they? How conservative are they? You know, where they're going to draw your child's interest in the rest of their lives. it lies on their hands, and it's you know, it's do your best. That's it.
Yeah,
That's it. That's all you can do.
that's it. Keep them alive until they're.
And
18.
then if you get mad, you start a Twitter account and you go after people. That's
you start banning shit to other people.
Pay. My kid's an angel. I would like to know. No, I'm not going to go into that. We need to go. Travis, we want to thank you for joining us tonight. It's been great having you back. You've been on before. I'm telling you, I'm having a brain fart day. I know this is I'm having one of those days.
It's cool, man. It's all good. Thanks for having me on, and hopefully I can be again in the future.
Yeah,
absolutely,
anytime.
dude.
Your next win, baby. Come on, and we'll have beer on the show that night. Well, have beer. We're adults. We're adults.
That sounds good. Yeah, yeah. Adult beverages. Yes.
Well, yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thank you, Travis.
Thank you. And we'll see everybody next Wednesday at the same time. And I have no idea what's happening next Wednesday. You just have to wait and find out. Peace out, and we'll see everybody next week.